All right, so today we are doing an odometer gear repair on a 1986 944 turbo. So this is the instrument cluster assembly out of the dash. So let's take it apart. The first we're going to start with is all these screws right here. They go all the way around the perimeter. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. So let's remove those. Before we remove this, we are going to verify so you can kind of see there's a bunch of gauge clusters back here. So I'm going to verify which one is the speedometer odometer assembly. I think it's this one. Yes, it is. So it's this assembly that's right here. So before I remove this, I'm actually going to loosen these 3 screws right here. Actually there's 4. There's 1, 2, 3. One hiding underneath here, and then one here. And then that should. I'm just going to loosen them, not remove them completely. I'll show you why in a second. Okay, that's loose. We're now going to go ahead and remove these screws. You can kind of see there's like a nice little hole right here between this printed ribbon cable. Be very careful with this old printed ribbon. This stuff is already 35 years old. It gets very brittle. Don't want to break it. I'm going to loosen it like that. Now, I'm going to remove this assembly. Okay, we're going to set that guy down right there on another pad. Do a couple different things here. So I've got the 2 removed, but not the last 2. Screws. Got one there. Let's wiggle that guy right out like that. Okay. Now, sliding right on out like so. Being ever so careful. Now there's a circuit board down there on the bottom. Okay, so one thing to notice on the 944 turbo is the odometer reset is very similar. It's a mechanical pull, and it resets the odometer. It's a bit backwards by comparison to the 911 because this button usually comes out through the front of this cluster gauge right here. And you mechanically push it with your finger. This one, it actually goes inside this little trap door in here, and there's a little coil winding in here with 2 wires coming off. So there's got to be a trip button. When you engage the trip button, it closes a contact inside this winding, and then it pulls this guy down and resets it. So it's like an electronic mechanical connection that happens there. Next step, we are going to remove the needle for the speedometer. And this orange needle, if you look straight down in a line, is pointed exactly perfect right down in the middle of that white dash, that lower white dash. Now it's removal time. We're going to go back and forth against the internal motor stop and pry up with our fingers at the same time. Until it starts to move like so. Do not use a tool other than your fingers to remove it. You'll break it. You can see on this guy right here, see the axle for the motor. It's sticking up about yay far. I don't know, 1/4 inch or so above the black face here. Okay. You don't want to break that little axle motor off. Now removing the 2 black screws. Perfect. Remove that. Set that down there. This is a nice heavy metal one. Okay, now let's go searching for our broken gear. So you can see this is the motor that drives the odometer. It's on a worm drive. it spins this gear right here, and it goes through a series of reductions. So this worm drive goes to this gear, it goes then to this small gear right on here, and then these two gears, and then finally that one right there. So what we're gonna do now is just remove this upper plate, and we're gonna make sure we do not touch any of these numbers, bottom, you know, the bottom one or the top one, and we're also not gonna touch that center axle for the speedometer needle. Don't touch it, you'll break it. Okay, awesome. We need to access this gear that's broken. We need to remove this gear, then this gear, and then this gear. This gear is held in by a small little axle shaft. It's just pressed in. There's no clips or anything. The other two gears are held in. There's the axle for that gear. So we're gonna very gently grab this gear, like so. And this is where patience is a very big deal. You must be very patient when removing these little snap rings and stuff. If it doesn't want to cooperate with you, just go take a break. Okay, boom. Okay, now we can remove this gear. It's going to go back on the same way. I'll lay it down just like that. Perfect, that clip's starting to move. Perfect. There's the clip. Okay, now we're going to remove this. This thing's like gummy. I'm going to get inside here. Just give it a little tiny pry from behind. Be very careful. We're just trying to break this guy free of the axle. The axle has to stay there. There we go, starting to move now. And you want to try to do all this but without damaging the gear, because we need to remove this gear and count the teeth on the gear. You can't grab this thing. You don't want to just put your big old bear claws on here and hold this thing down. You don't want to do that. You have to grab it very gently. Okay, perfect. So you can see how bad a shape this is actually in. It's actually missing. It's missing a bunch of teeth here. It's missing one there, there, there. So I believe this is going to be a 20 by 21 gear, but we're going to count them all right now. Put a little tiny mark right here for number 1. So this is the 20 gear. There's only 2 options. There's a 20 by 21 or a 20 by 22. So because this has got 20 teeth on it, this is the one that's unchanged. So we need to count this little tiny one right here. I'm gonna do the same thing, use a little pen trick. I don't know if you can see it, but there's actually 2 gears on this, just this one gear. There's this gear and then this gear right here. So how many teeth does this one have? This is a 20 by 21 gear. This thing came apart and it's all like kind of, it's like turned color and it's super mushy, it's sticky. That stickiness from that plastic has worn off onto this metal axle. I don't want to put the brand new gear on the sticky axle. So now we're going to clean it. A little bit of parts cleaner. This stuff is kind of nasty. It's actually like leaked. It's leached onto the plastic housing up here. And so I got to clean all that off before it can go back inside the car, because it'll just glue the new gear down. We may have to use like a small metallic brush to get the rest of the stuff off. Ideally, I want this axle to look just like this axle. When I've done these before, I've gotten it to make it look that good, but I can still feel the friction on this one. It's still not clean. We're going to agitate some of this stuff off of the axle just with a nice little brass metal brush. Be very careful because the thing that's holding this is just a little thin plastic guide mount here. So now what we're going to go do, it feels pretty good now. Now what we're going to go do is install the gear and just make sure it spins freely by hand. So that spins much nicer. That's good. What we're going to do now is just put it back together. So putting E-clips on and off these little axles are kind of tricky. I do some RC car racing. So if you're an RC car enthusiast, they're very easy to deal with because you always have to take these things off when you break them. What you want to make sure that you do, if you're not very familiar with E-clips, is you're not trying to load against this plastic housing at all. You can only load right against the axle like what I'm doing. So I'm just pinching against the axle shaft and the clip. And when I pinch it on like that, it clips on and it's done. If you try to like push it on by hand, like push it down with a plier, you're gonna end up breaking this ear off. Okay, so don't do that. Only use a plier like how I just showed you. And this was the gear that was directly meshing with this gear. And you can see it has like all these little, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but can the camera pick up the little orange specks in there? Those orange specks are the old gear coming apart and it's landing inside here. I don't want to use any chemicals to clean it off because I don't want to put a chemical on this gear because I don't want this gear to fail. They don't make this gear because the gear normally doesn't fail. So what we have to do is kind of floss these things just like you're flossing your teeth. And if you find a little spot that's got an orange spot in it, you just got to floss it out, not going into the other gear. And without using chemicals, that's about as clean as I can get it right there. So does this gear drive that gear nicely? Yes, it does. Is there any binding? Do I feel any binding points in it? No. So that's all good. So let's go ahead and put that gear back in there. So I'm just going to set that gear on top of there like that with a plier. And then I'm going to pinch it on like so. Or the clip is what I'm trying to say. Done. You don't want to push on that axle at all. Okay, now for the last gear, we're going to set this gear in there. And this is the gear that actually touches and spins our odometer. Don't touch the numbers. You can see my touch it all moves. So I have to support this edge over here. So use something like a screwdriver or something. Right, don't try to put your finger in there like what I just did. And push on that edge while you push the axle through. If you don't try to support that other edge, it won't work. So the axle's almost all the way through here. There we go. Done. That's in. So if I spin this gear, are we advancing? Yep. So let's advance the odometer. Does that work? Yes. The white side, the tenths are moving. And then our 1 should start moving right there on the bottom. Perfect. Done. So we're going to put this back together. Make sure you don't have any greasy or oily hands when you touch the face of this, because all your marks will show up. Okay, before we tighten those, we're going to make sure that we get this number set aligned pretty well. It's pretty good. there. You don't tighten these very much. They're just holding the face on. And that feels good. We're gonna put our speedo needle on. Twist it down into position. It's a tapered fit. And it's exactly where we had it before. Right in the center of that lower white dash. So accelerate, decelerate. The stop is right there in the center. So that's in the exact same position. We're just going to give that a little press right down there in the middle. Done. Perfect. Okay. So now we are going to set this whole assembly back down. Make sure when we touch it, we don't touch the front face here. The odometer reset magnet needs to go back down inside there. These little rubber insulators that are on the bottom of the circuit board, make sure that those are on and in position. These connectors down in here feed from the ribbon printed circuit board that's on the back to this printed circuit board that's mounted on here. So all this stuff has to happen at the same time. First thing, we got to make sure that we got this guy lined up right there like that. That's going to go just down like so. It's all going to fit down just like that. We are going to take and grab this and flip it around like this. Okay, just tighten that guy, and that one looked like it was a little too high before. Be very careful with this ribbon back here. It's super delicate. Don't go like this screw right here. Don't go tighten it crazy. I'm actually feeling it pull against my fingers on the back right here. If you tighten it, you can easily break. Okay, it just stopped moving. That's all the tightening it's getting. That one I can tighten a little tiny bit more because it's not against the ribbon. Same thing with that one. That one don't over tighten, and that one don't over tighten. So the next step here is to make sure that this is still, that our needle's still aligned. We don't have any marks on the black face right there anywhere. And then is the gauge aligned with the gauge with the RPM gauge. If we just kind of look down at like this, and yes it is. Now we are just going to go put this guy back together. I did notice there's a little, that little sticker fell down in there while I was just moving this around. Okay, so you want to make sure that you get all that stuff out of there without making too much of a mess. Kind of went down there and like got stuck. This old sticker. Get that thing out of there. Like an old marking sticker. I'll probably end up actually gluing this back on. I don't know where it physically was, but it's cool because it's actually a date stamp. 12 of 85. 763, 12 of 85. So December of 85, this unit was put together. When I removed it, it fell into that pocket. I did not see exactly where it came from, but it was probably on the back side of here somewhere. So with that being said, actually here, check this out. This is the same kind of sticker right here. This is 843-1285, and this is 763-1285. I almost wonder if it was like kind of stuck like that or something. We'll glue that back down. You want to make sure you handle this piece with care because you have all these little indicators in here, like the turn signal indicator, the warning indicator, and those pieces can fall out. And if they fall out, they're going to be an annoyance to the driver because there's no more blind happening with the light bulb that's behind it. So it'll be super bright. So make sure you don't move any of that stuff. There's a little tiny bit of dirt inside here. It is going to be a little bit difficult to clean this piece. You gotta go through these holes on the inside, but we're gonna do it just slowly. There's kind of some years and years of dust accumulation in here. Cool. So we are done. This is going to go back in the car and we'll test it. Do you want to check your workspace? You don't have any extra screws for this sticker, like so. And then we're just going to tape it right down onto the top. Like that. The problem with this whole car, with this whole odometer, was this gear. So that gear is changed now, renewed. And let's go get this thing back in the turbo and get it working.